Define middle class in Australia.
An income of between, you ready for this? $120,000 to about $150,000.
Avoiding the middle class poverty trap. What does that look like and what's the future forward?
Middle class is an aspirational group for a lot of people, but as we go through this and look at the definitions versus the real world that we live in, it is a massive, massive poverty trap.
Understanding needs versus wants is probably a big component to that demographic. You can afford things, but do you necessarily need them?
If you've got a value system personally, it provides a great framework for making decisions. If that decision aligns with your values, it's something you do. And if it's something that clashes with your values, then it's probably something you need to talk about, if not do. This week, we are looking at the middle class poverty trap. Income-wise, appear on paper to be going quite well, but does it equate to a better quality of life and ultimately financial freedom?
There's a massive difference that people need to understand of financial comfort versus financial freedom. It's easy to be comfortable in the middle class. It's not easy to be financially free, which is where we want to be.
The opposite of success is comfort. If you're going to go for it, don't settle for comfort. Go for freedom, go for success. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we are looking at the middle class poverty trap. Bit of a controversial headline, but lots to unpack in here. Many people out there, income-wise, appear on paper to be going quite well, but does it equate to a better quality of life and ultimately financial freedom? We're going to explore some of the pitfalls, some of the tricks to make sure you don't fall into that trap. So as always, don't simply take notes. Make sure you take plenty of action. See you in the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitchell Olarenshaw. How are you, mate?
Very well. Thanks very much for having me on the show. Fairly confronting episode that we have in front of us, although very valuable for our listeners looking to get ahead. This is about avoiding the middle class poverty trap. Now, there's a lot to unpack in this because middle class, what does that look like and what's the future forward?
That's a huge statement, isn't it? And labels are a really confronting thing to use at any time. And middle class is an aspirational group for a lot of people. But as we go through this and look at the definitions versus the real world that we live in, it is a massive poverty trap, and it's one to avoid like the plague. Got to be careful what you wish for. So we'll explore what it is, where it is, and how to make sure you don't get stuck in it.
100%. And I think that the big ticket item here is that there's a massive difference that people need to understand of financial comfort versus financial freedom.
I like that.
It's easy to be comfortable in the middle class. It's not easy to be financially free, which is where we want to be.
You're right. And comfort, you know, the opposite of success is comfort. There's a
like
nice
that.
cliche there. You
Nice.
know, if you're going to go for it, don't settle for comfort. Go for freedom. Go for success.
Okay, so let's define middle class in Australia to give this some context.
All right. Current stats: an income of between, you ready for this? $120,000 to about $150,000.
And that's middle class in Australia before tax.
As defined. So if you think about that, there's pre-tax, which after our good friends in Canberra have had their grotty little paws all over it, is substantially less. I think what would be a tax rate on that? Be about 30%.
Yeah, maybe 25 to 32, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Okay, so the average income in Australia is around 100,000.
Correct.
So middle class is really only 20 or 30 grand pre-tax above that level of the
Or
average.
20% if you want to use percentages. It's a nudge over the average income, and I think that's where that definition has fallen way behind. You know, and it's interesting. I mean, if you look at what's gone on in the US, you know, through the 1960s, particularly in 50s and 60s after the Second World War, and before my time, before you get smart, the reality was that the middle class in the US had just the most booming time. The economy was growing, and you had everybody was in a good space. You know, your suburban house, you could afford a family, car.
The American dream,
The
right?
American dream, as we've all seen on the TV. And over the last 15 to 20 years, it's actually the middle class component of the US economy that's been absolutely gutted in so many different ways, with the restructuring of the labor market, government policy, and a variety of other things. And so it's not the shining beacon that it once was. And that's why I really like your point about, comfort versus freedom. The idea of being middle class was that you've come up for air and you're out of the working classes and you're experiencing a better quality of life. But in fact, the poverty trap that sits there for the middle class, particularly in Australia at the moment, has never been more vivid. And it's a very painful conversation I suspect we're going to have.
Yeah, I think, in the middle class, it's easy to be comfortable because you've got enough income to maybe likely afford to be able to rent. Let's say, for example, you've got a long-term partner and then have some spending money on the side. The challenge is if you spend all of your money on the side and you're paying for rent and you've got a partner and maybe a child come along, it's very easy to deplete everything that you have and have nothing left over. hence getting stuck in the trap. So if we talk about maybe some of the silent creeps that catch up on the middle class, AB, what would spring to mind for you?
I think lifestyle inflation, which I know is your dad's favorite, it's one of your favorites too, and I agree wholeheartedly with it, and that is as your income grows, the discretionary spend that you have on certain things also increases too, and you could look at that at big line items like a car. So if you've had a big promotion at work and a half decent pay rise, maybe you feel that there's a need for you to have a European car, for example. Just as an example, maybe you clothes shopping, maybe the restaurants you go to, the wine you drink, the holidays you go on, where you sit on the plane, are all examples of lifestyle inflation where the expenses are also ratcheting up alongside the income. And so when you look at that on a net basis, you might be earning more, but you're also spending more on effectively the same things. Yeah, what's the marginal utility of having a Mercedes instead of a Toyota, for example?
There's no real difference. It's purely just how you look when you get out of it, I would argue. It's funny, I won't name any names here. I've got friends, for example, in kind of this same exact trap. So she's a teacher and her partner's a tradie. They make about 200 grand as a household. So they're actually technically above probably that middle class area, I guess on a household basis, probably about the mark. Now they live a pretty good life. They do a lot of dinners. They're always staying at the Carlisle Hotel and weekends away, but they've never managed to crack the property market, and they're both mid-30s. Now, I guess on 200 grand a year, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you probably classify that as a rich Australian household.
Yep.
Now with property prices and inflation, it's really nowhere.
Very true. And it's always interesting. Always, like, when I've sat down and done money coaching with people and you go, right, tell me about what you do. What do you spend your money on? And you say, better yet, bring your card statements in and let's have a go through it. Different color highlighter for the different things. So I stayed at Carlisle. Last time I stayed there was in March. Different set of circumstance. Our daughter was in the ICU at the hospital and we needed someone to stay. Didn't get a lot of choice. $1,200 a night.
Yeah, they don't miss you there.
No. And you go, well, if you don't own a property and, you're chasing the game, why are you staying at a $1,200 a night hotel?
Pure ego. That's the only reason, and that is lifestyle inflation.
And so there it is in its purest form. So when you go through your credit card statement or your bank statement or your debit card and you start to look at where this is classified, is it something that's a need or is it a want? Secondly, if it's a want, is there a way you could have done it cheaper, for example? And so that difference in what you spent on something you want becomes a slight saving. So you're spending less, but you're still getting stuff that you want. And it's a really important thing to do. And you're right. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head with property prices running as they have, and the deposit requirements and servicing loans. And everyone's talking about, interest rates are lower now, so it's easier, but they won't stay low forever. And we've got the risk of inflation in our economy. I'll give you one example of this week. So I'm quite organized, as you know, so I've got all of my utilities on the same cycle just because it makes admin at home easy and all the rest of it. So my water rates jumped by 8.2% or will do from the next quarter going forward. For quite what reason, I don't know. And my electricity, Origin very kindly informed me, would be 9% more expensive going forward.
Very nice.
And you're looking at this and you're going, right, okay, so inflation is supposedly, early 2s, 2.3, 2.4%, but the reality of the cost of living for everybody listening to this show and out there living in Australia is not slowing down any way, shape or form. We're paying $6 for a coffee, plus of course the merchant fee when you actually pay for it on your card as well, another 1% tagged on that people seem to have missed. And so this cost of living is creating havoc in households. So on the surface of it, it may look like you're getting ahead and you've got a great paying job. Take your tax out of it, which is not much fun in this country at the best of times, and then the cost of living. Net, you've got people that are earning, as you say, 10 years ago, what would have been a great salary, actually struggling to make ends meet. And that's not because they're staying at flash hotels. That's just running a household now is damned expensive.
Oh, yeah. One thing that kind of springs to my mind is the cost of debt and how that can increase and decrease. So let's say you are a part of that middle class earning that amount and you've got a property that you own, let's say, for example. Now, if you're if the cost of living is getting fairly out of control and you're living fairly hard, you could be in a situation where you're paycheck to paycheck or fairly close to it. What happens when inflation goes out of control and then interest rates go up and all of a sudden now you need to find an extra $200 a week to service your property?
Well, that buffer's not there. And one of the things I talk about extensively in the book, The Wealth Playbook, is if you're going to borrow, don't worry about what the prevailing rates are today. Look at what the worst case scenario is. So maybe add 2 or 3% more on your interest rate payment so you can see if it all turned to custard, what you could be in the chair for. And that then leads into, okay, if we're in a rate cutting cycle, which we are right now, and it's getting, interest rates are coming down, so your mortgage is getting cheaper. Hard as it is, because you feel like you might have been struggling to stay on top of it, try and keep your payments at that previous level for a number of reasons. Number one, you get your mortgage paid off more quickly, especially if you're paying it off the principal rather than the interest. But number two, if your payments have dropped by, say, $300 a month, what are you going to do with that $300 a month? If you're putting it into an investment account, I've got no issue with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
If you're putting it into an offset account, I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But when you go, okay, we're $300 better off, it's been a real struggle, let's go on holiday now, we're out of that stressful period that we've been in, I don't know that that's a great way of setting yourself up for a better quality financial future where freedom rather than anything else is what you're looking down the barrel at. And it's not to say I'm being the fun police when I say that, but this is a game. Money and life is a game, and you have to understand what the rules are.
Yeah, I think the middle class is maybe a runaway train insofar as if you don't get out of it, you can get stuck there. And that only leads one way. I think understanding needs versus wants is probably a big component to that demographic. You can afford things, but do you necessarily need them? So if we explore that a little bit more, AB, in your experience, what's been some of the pitfalls of the middle class, so to speak, that we've seen in that sense?
Look, I think objectivity in your decision making is key, more than anything when it comes to the world of money, saving, how you go about living your life. And if you make decisions, and this is a more holistic sort of view, if you've got a map of the world, if you've got a value system personally, I think it provides a great framework for making decisions, whether that's business decisions or personal decisions, because if that decision aligns with your values, it's something you do. And if it's something that clashes with your values, then it's probably something you need to talk about, if not do. It's as simple as that. And a lot of people don't have that. You go through life and you just do what feels right at the time. And if you let's just say you've been on a reasonable trajectory with your career and you've moved up the ranks. And let's say you're in the legal profession, for example, which, my wife is and was, she's a partner at a law firm. And you've moved through from being an associate to maybe a junior partner to a partner. All of a sudden, you're part of this new group. And you've got to be seen to fit into that group. Very important, because it's a professional industry and there's a certain standing. And we're partners now, so we're having a weekend at this winery down in the Hunter, coming down. And it's like, the peer pressure is almost there.
You can't say
to do
no,
that,
right?
Because if you don't, you kind of feel marginalised at work.
Yep.
At the same time, okay, you're going to get down to a winery for the weekend in the Hunter Valley. There's a couple of airfares. Got to get a couple of new outfits so you look nice and sharp and fit in with the gang. And then there's whatever you spend when you're down there. It's a $5,000 weekend. Maybe more.
Yeah.
Right. And the flip side of that is, if you've got the fortitude to say, look, can't make this one, we're doing a couple of other things, doing whatever it might be, and you put that $5,000 into debt reduction or into your investment account, and over a 5-year period in a half decent investment account, that $5,000 is worth 50. Was that weekend in the Hunter worth 50 grand to you in terms of missed opportunity? And you've got to be strong to do that.
Yeah.
And you've got to have very, very clear values on that. And as I say, it's hard because you don't want to get marginalized from your peer group. But in a way, they'll almost respect you more down the line, because if they are on a cash burn because of appearances' sake, for example, I keep coming back to appearances because that's how most people make their decisions. It's ego-driven or it's appearance decision. When they're 55 and still having to punch the clock in convenient 6-minute increments because they've still got debt to sort out, and you're not, because you've got a debt-free property portfolio and a stock market portfolio, and you've bought your time back and you've gone, well, you can jam this lot, give my job to somebody that wants it. That's a really liberating place to be.
It's a difference between comfort and freedom, as you say, and that might be comfortable going to the Hunter Valley, having fun for the weekend. You can probably afford to do it in the middle class, but what is the impact long term? And I think that's where most people, particularly in the younger demographic, my demographic, miss out, is things that are good now aren't necessarily going to be better later.
There's an opportunity cost to everything. Whether it's time or resources, focus, bandwidth, whatever it might be, health benefits, everything has got an opportunity cost to it. And sometimes in that moment, and we've talked many times about buy now, pay later, we'll get a round of espresso martinis at the casino, and we're going to use Afterpay to pay for it because we don't have the cash. And
it makes me
there's
green.
4 of you, so there's your $150 round, happy days. Oh yeah, it was a great night, as you wake up with a banging headache the next day. Like I say, been there, done that, been young and done crazy stuff too. But, there's $150 that you're going to be paying off on convenient installments over the next 6 weeks that you could have done something else with. And it's not that one round of drinks. It's a series of decisions that lead you into that space. And the opportunity cost might be, over the course of a year, maybe $10,000 of things that you wanted to do that you didn't need to do. Now, 10 grand after tax is a reasonable slab of cash. It's $200 a week effectively. If you had that 10 grand and you put it into something, let's just say for argument's sake, you put it into a NASDAQ index tracker, which is averaging 17% a year. So you'd have made, $1,700 on that this year. And if things go the way they have been for the last decade and continue to do that, over the next 5 years, you're going to have 20 grand. You're going to have double the money. You're going to have the ability to do a lot with that, i.e. double it again over the next 5 years, and you've now got 40 grand, which might be enough to pay the stamp duty on a property transaction or whatever it may be. And all we're talking about here is eliminating that emotional, in the moment, spontaneity purchase, which doesn't set you up for a successful life.
Yeah, I think more money doesn't equal more freedom.
No.
And the reason being, it's not about what you make, it's what you get to keep.
Well, the problem's just become bigger, and that's the thing. I had this conversation with Dad a while ago, and, wife's pretty good at the moment. And, he's got like, I didn't particularly expect to be in this position myself. Maybe I did, but, it's nice when you're there. But the problems also become substantially bigger as well. And everything that comes alongside that becomes more challenging that comes alongside it. And you can fall into a trap. So, if you think about your kids, so my daughter started horse riding. And I should have known better because one of our team here's daughter horse rides as well. So I had a very, very clear early warning signal.
It's expensive, right?
This is like the cash burn rate, like a tech IPO almost. It's like, and now my son's taking it up too. So I've got a need for another horse. So the creep is there. And that's a big expense. It can just creep up. And I'm happy to do it for my kids. I'm also in a position where when I was younger, I made a lot of very savvy decisions to get myself in a position where I can do that and be in a freedom position versus a comfortable position. But I also look around at some of the gymkhanas, at parents that are on that trajectory, and it's everything they've got supporting that. And you want to give your children an opportunity in life. At the same time, if you overindulge, what's the opportunity cost of that too? In that for them to be able to support that, they might be working away a lot more and actually having less time with their kids. It might be that they've compromised on, an investment portfolio that would pay for the kids to go to university at some point in time. It might be that they haven't got out of the rental market and they're in, that they're renting rather than owning because of that. And it's all the peripheral things that go with it. You got to have a big 4-wheel drive to tow a float to put horses in. So there's all of this additional stuff that comes along. And it's a very visceral way of seeing it there because, there are people that got cash and there are people that don't. And the running costs are the same for both groups. It's brutal. Yeah. And that's an example there where you've piled into something that maybe will come as a consequence quite significantly, in other aspects of your life too.
So let's stare down the barrel now. Let's look at our middle class people right now listening to this. They are listening to this for a reason. It's because they want financial freedom, not necessarily financial comfort. Let's trade some blows here. What's our advice to the middle class right now on escaping that trap?
I'm going to just take it back a half step if I can. They might want that. Like we all want stuff. I just told you just before we went on camera something I want right now. And that's nice. But are you prepared to pay the price of admission? We can all have wants. They're dreams. You've got to be prepared to roll the sleeves up and say, I'm committed to actually making this a reality. So it's not just a want for me. I'm committed to this. And if you're not prepared to commit to it, this probably isn't the show for you. And there's a limit to what we can do to help you, because you have to be the person that ultimately makes that first decision to do it.
Yep.
And I appreciate that sounds really harsh, but sometimes, tough love is needed if someone really wants to get out of the funk or the trap that they might be seeing themselves in. So if you want to get out of this and you're committed to it, it starts with re-educating yourself, I think, about money and the money game, and starts with budgeting, and it starts with having a very clear focus on the word we seem to be using a lot of at the moment, trajectory. To say, this is where I want things to touch down. This is where I am today. What are the steps I need to do literally in this minute, this moment, right now, to set myself up on a trajectory where I can get to that point of having some level of freedom.
Yeah.
So my suggestion in terms of an action point when we're done with this podcast in a few moments' time, and I do hope we see you next week. I hope I didn't put you off with my tough love. And if you are here next week, we can help you. And if hearing something you don't want to hear is enough to put you off, you're never going to be successful. So don't worry about it. It's okay. The reality is, take some time out now and have a think about, okay, where are you at exactly? What is your financial position exactly, and why is it where it is? Secondly, where do you want to get to? Go through the Wealth Playbook. There's some terrific budgeting tools in there. There are great cost-saving tools in there in terms of making sure your monthly, quarterly, annual billings that are fixed can be at the best cost they can be. All that sort of stuff to give you some surplus cash flow to move ahead. Reach out, talk to us, hit us up on socials. We want to help people. That's why we do this every week. Incidentally, episode 300.
Yeah, that's right. We're getting on, aren't we?
We are. 300. They said, you never keep this up. 300 weeks, haven't missed a day. Gotta love it, man.
That's right.
So congratulations,
Thank
by the way.
you.
And there's another thing. Once you make a commitment to something, you see it through. And that's the key thing. You make a commitment, see it through. So that book is full of great resources. We're full of great resources too. So if you're a runner, if you're someone that wants to do this, reach out to us. Hit us up with the comments on socials, wherever it might be, and say, look, I need help with this. And it'll be most forthcoming. And you'd be surprised. I think people often ask, why would you help someone? And the answer is really simple. I think if you've achieved a level of, depending on your motivation, but if you've achieved a level of success, there's almost an obligation to help other people, not everyone, but other people that are prepared to step up and have their crack at it, to give them as much help as you can, because they'll pass it on to the next person. It's just called paying it forward.
Yep. Very nice. I'll offer something as well. Now, I may be young, although I'm certainly well past middle class, is give away the good opinions of others. If you're stuck in that trap, forget about what's convenient now and what's comfortable now. Think about where it is long term, because you have to give up stuff now, and stuff that feels good and looks good now for the benefit of later on. And as soon as you pass that bridge almost, and you'll know it when you see it, when you feel it, things change. Yeah, and they can happen quickly.
That's a quote I haven't heard for a long time, and it's one I absolutely wholeheartedly believe in. Giving away the good opinion of other people, it doesn't add up to a hill of beans. It really doesn't. And we're in a world now where relationships are often synthetic or online. They're not virtual. They're not real. The people that are in your circle, your family, your mentors, the people that mean something to you, their opinion matters. Everyone else doesn't add up to a hill of beans.
That's right. AB, thanks very much for your insight today. I think that was a really good one. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Anytime, Mitch.
If there are words or phrases in this podcast that you don't fully understand, or perhaps you're someone that's looking to generate strategies to help build your wealth, make sure you visit wealthplaybook.com.au and grab your copy of our latest best-selling book, which is absolutely jam-packed with strategies, techniques, and most importantly, checklists that will practically give you a guide to create tomorrow's wealth today.